Hello again and welcome back. I am McSnazzi and today we are back in Ranger Park Zoo for our Phase 1 tour of the zoo. It's going to be an exciting episode. We're going to go over all the builds we've done so far and see it from a first person point of view. So let's get started. We're starting here at the front entrance of the zoo and we're going to make our way over to one of the two parking lots. Now I'll show a little bit of a zoo map on the screen now so you can see we are on the east parking lot where there's two parking garages, as you can see there. And I apologize in advance, the first person guy is going to walk a little fast. There is a way in the game that you can walk a little slower, but it's really slow and the video would probably be an hour long, which we are not trying to do here. So we're going to deal with the fast pace and I'll stop for a little bit of talking whenever there is time. Since we're at a little bit of a pause at the front of the zoo here, I want to let everyone know, please consider subscribing down below. It's completely free and it really does help out the channel. Now to get back to our tour here, we're at the front lodge building. Out front we have this nice little drive up circle with little picnic benches out in the median there. We're gonna walk into the zoo now. We're gonna take the paw pass, sort of like the members entrance into the zoo, and we're opened up with a nice big area full of trees. We have a gift shop right here on the entrance building. There's a nice pond there. There's some bathrooms to the left there. Ranger Park Conservation Society logo in the middle of the cement there. Over here in this direction we have our guest services building and our research and conservation center, which is more or less the staff building. There's a ton of staff buildings stuffed into that small area, and I wanted to make it look like a realistic sort of staff building as well. Over here we have a little bit of a dock on our nice little pond, a little bit of an entrance lake sort of. We have a fountain out there and it's just a beautiful view to open you into the zoo. And you can take either a path to the right or the left when you come in. We're going to go down the left path and we're going to meet back up with the right path later. Over here we have our realistic bathrooms with lockers, ATM here, everything you need to sort of get that sort of feeling of a realistic zoo. And when you're going out for a nice day at the zoo, you might want to lock some things up. You might want to get some money out or take a bathroom break before you start your trek. Over here we have a little bit of sort of a retaining bridge for the pond there. And we have our pause station over here, which is not yet functional, still under construction, as the sign says. There's going to be a few places in the zoo that are like that, but I have fenced them off and put sort of the signs there to tell you that there is construction going on, so we'll see a little bit of that. But here we are at the butterfly house. I think this is one of my favorite builds in the zoo. Even though there's not butterflies in the game, we can't really do anything like that, I still really love it. We have this sort of outcropping to the pond here with a little bit of a seating area, just a nice little touch to if anyone wants to take a breather and just sit down and look at the lake. So here we are, we're going to head down towards the anteaters and tapirs, the first sort of animals we put into the zoo. Now these guys are not part of any sort of grouping or any sort of area. As you'll see later in the zoo, we have sort of themed areas. These guys are kind of just an outcropping, and there are a few other animals kind of like that too, but we'll get to that later. But now we can see a little bit of the habitat. Smaller but very lush and enjoyable to look at. Something to start you off on your zoo tour, and it's a good first animal to see in the zoo. Now we're sort of down the main drag here. At the end we have the research center we'll get to shortly, spotted hyenas to the right, and we have our paw pantry sort of eatery right here to the left we'll check out first. Now this was the first eatery we built in the zoo, and I think it's the only one right now. I've plopped a few down, but they're in sort of the under construction areas. Inside it's just very basic, wanted it to be realistic with a little bit of a outdoor eating area and some fans above, and then an outdoor patio area as well. Just you know, a basic zoo sort of realistic looking area. So there is the Gulpy Education Center, but we're going to go over to the right and check out the cheetahs instead of going this way initially. I do show a little bit of this greenery and statue as well, which is really nice. I'm really happy with this building. And if you haven't seen some of these builds or you want to see any of the builds done in this tour, check it out in the playlist below, Ranger Park Zoo playlist. All the episodes of everything that you are seeing in this tour is built in time-lapse and real-time walkthrough with commentary down below in the playlist. Check it out if you haven't. Now here we're at the spotted hyena exhibit, one of the more realistically inspired exhibits in this zoo. As I talk a lot about realism in this zoo, it's sort of my goals This habitat and the cheetah one adjacent to this is sort of this style where we have a little bit of a planter box where we have some plants, a fence, and then a ditch separating the cheetahs from the guests, which I think is very realistic and very safe. Now let's head back into the staff area before we get through the rest of the zoo. This is sort of a little backstage area to sort of add to the realism. We have a big barn there, warehouse. We have some extra sort of materials laying in the concrete over there. We have barn doors, a parking lot back here. We even have a little truck load-off stop on that building as well. We have a sort of entry code area, so it's legit. And we have two just basic buildings copy pasted back and back. We have some dumpsters over here, and then this way is the employee entrance into the staff center or the education center that we did visit earlier when we first walked up into the zoo. So it's all pretty much functional, even though it doesn't really work like that in the zoo. There are paths under all of this, so the staff does walk back here, as you saw a second ago when we walked in. So I like that little aspect. I think it adds a lot to the realism, and I think it adds just a little layer, another layer to the build itself, and it's just interesting to try to figure that stuff out as well. Across from that staff area, we have another little staff area. This is the spotted hyena and cheetah sort of staff center. There's little centers and little like areas, indoor areas for all the animals. So when it's winter time, things like that, they can go into those areas, sort of another aspect of the realism. But here is the cheetah enclosure. There are two of them because according to the Zoopedia in the game, cheetahs only tend to mate for a little while and then they run around in bachelor packs if they are guys. So one side there's a male and a female, the other side there is a trio of three male cheetahs, and it's just a nice little exhibit, kind of mirroring what the spotted hyena exhibit looks like a little bit. So they're pretty similar in structure and in look. So I did go for that, and I do like how these look. These are sort of the first big builds we did in the zoo, so a lot has changed since then. You'll see, you know, we upped the detail a little bit in places, but I really think we pinned the realism of these couple enclosures on the head. So now as we head down sort of this way, we have a little education area with a couple picnic benches as well. Try to add a little bit of education areas and picnic benches, park benches everywhere as we go through the zoo. Just a little touch of realism as well. Things you'll find when you're going through a real zoo. So we're out of the hyena exposure where we came in from. We are back at the Gulpy Education Center. Now to do a little bit of this is a sort of an education center, so they'll have like 4D movies, they'll have talks, they'll have shows. If you're in a class, you'd probably go to the Gulpy Education Center to see something like that and sort of see a talk, or maybe you can have lunch there, maybe they have a banquet hall. Just an all-purpose sort of main zoo building for events and stuff like that. A little bit of a backstage area, parking lot. We have some trash cans and an electronic transformer, stuff like that. Stuff you'd see tucked behind walls. So we're going to head this way to sort of some of the main attractions at the zoo. We have the Big Cats area to the right and the Savannah Safari to the left. First thing we're going to check out is the Savannah Safari. Now the Savannah Safari is a big enclosure that encompasses giraffes, they have gazelles, African water buffalo, the springboks as well. I think there's a couple more. You'd have to go check out the Savannah Safari video in the description playlist below in order to figure it out. I can't remember off the top of my head, but over here we have a little bit of an education pavilion. Since this is more of a bigger enclosure for the zoo, this houses a ton of animals. When you go to the zoo, you'd like to see giraffes and zebras, as you can see out there, sort of the zoo animals, like African zoo animals. There is a giraffe feeding area, another big attraction for the zoo. I made this little outcropping here where you can theoretically feed the giraffes if they had that in the game. Now there is a giraffe enrichment item right there that they do eat, so they do get very close. But there's also right here an education pavilion. If a class would come to the zoo, you could see sort of a demonstration or a talk right there from an educator in order to see and learn a little bit more about the African Savannah Safari. So we're gonna head more this way. We have one more little viewing area of the Savannah Safari, sort of with this modernistic canopy of just some wood beams, and then a little bit of an education terrace here as well, so you can get a little bit of more knowledge. This is one of the bigger enclosures of the zoo. So, you know, lots of money spent on this from a realistic standpoint. So, got to put a lot of amenities in as well. There's a giraffe house right there that I do believe we take a look at a little further in this tour. So, you jump out right at the lion's den, which is part of the big cats area. And we're going to head over to the entrance of that now. That's sort of the main entrance, but there's a side entrance that we're going to go in from, and we're going to sort of head that way now. Over this way, there's a little bit of picnic area to the right, lion's den straight ahead. We're going to head right in one of my favorite builds that we've done, one of the bigger builds in the zoo. There's sort of an island that you sit on and watch the lions from with this sort of education center. We have this bridge that you walk out over the lion habitat. I think it's very cool. You can see the lions down there right now, and sort of a little education center as well for the lions. We have a few little things in here. It's a little sparse because you can only put so much detail in these little education areas, but there's a little outlook here with glass. You can see the lions with sort of a Lion King inspired Pride Rock right there that the lions can sit on. A little waterfall to the right, and there's a lot of lions in this enclosure as well, as you can see right there. One of my favorite builds that we've done in the zoo. I think it was very fun build, and something very different than what I've seen as well. So if you guys want to see that build, you can check it out in the playlist down below, as I've said before in this tour. So now we're going to head towards the Bengal Tiger exhibit, the other animal in the big cats area, along with the cheetah, which is right there. We've already visited the cheetahs, so I'll just sort of mention them. Some more education boards, but Bengal tigers over here. We are going to add some snow leopards to the big cats area as well, but that is going to be in a future episode in the under construction area. So now we're at the Bengal tiger area. This is one of my favorites. I'm going to say that for a few of these, but this is another one of my favorites. I really went overboard with the vegetation here. It's a little less realistic in that sense, because I don't know in an actual zoo if you'd see this natural looking of a habitat for the tigers, but there's just a lot going on here, and I just love how it looks. Just had a little fun with it as well. We put sort of this old stone looking like terrace here for it as well that I also like, and there's a tiger cave viewing, little bit of a center for tiger education, as well as looking at the tigers while they're sleeping. Let's see if we catch one here. Oh, we do. This is perfect. So we got a little tiger there, and there are two Bengal tigers in the enclosure, a male and a female. And that is the Bengal tiger enclosure. The last of the big cats area in the zoo right now, as we have this way some under construction area as well. There's a couple other parts in the zoo, if I haven't already mentioned that as well, that are under construction, since this is the phase 1 of the Ranger Park Zoo. So there's going to be a phase 2 that's going to be the complete zoo. We're kind of at the halfway point, if not a little over it. If you can't tell by watching this tour, as it is pretty long, there is a lot of different enclosures here. Let's head to sort of the last build of the African area, along with the African safari over this way. You can hear them now. We had the African elephants, one of the more recent builds in the zoo, in an area where we sort of haven't been in a while. So a lot of the builds you just saw were less recent and from a while back. So this elephants one is pretty recent. I went for a realistic vibe as well for this, gave the elephants lots of space, a little bit of outcropping. You saw the sign a second ago, but we have sort of a little bit of a ditch protecting the guests from the elephants, or the elephants from the guests, however you want to see it. And then we have sort of this terrace that we also had in the Savannah Safari, and I apologize for the volume of the elephants. They are very loud when they use their trunks. And for this I wanted to go for a big area. I wanted the elephants to have lots of space to walk around, and kind of like the African Savannah, they have a pond over at one spot, and they have just a lot of open area. Back here we're going to step behind the staff building, showing a little bit more of the backstage, sort of a staff area that we have behind it, the big cats exhibits of the Bengal tiger and the lions, right next to the elephants here, just so we can have some more staff buildings scattered throughout the zoo. It helps with functioning the zoo, and it just a little bit more of that realism touched in here and there. So now we're going to pass by the elephant house right here as we go along this long trek, and this is sort of probably going to be the boundary of this side of the zoo, as we're all the way to the right, as you can see on the map now. And we have the rest of the elephants here, this is their sort of watering hole, and behind me is under construction. That way we're going to expand the African area. We're going to probably do hippos, and I think another African animal as well. Probably the rhinos, even though they are the Indian rhinos in this game. We're also going to have an African eatery that way, and that's sort of what's going to go there for now. So over here we have a little staff area. This is the Giraffe house, sort of a blocked off staff area that you can't really see, but there are some staff paths that leads to it. We have a little bit of a transformer there as well. Big garage doors there for getting the animals in and out if they need to. It's a little place for them to go during the winter and the nighttime if they need a place to sit down. Now we're gonna have to move all the way back to the education center, the Gulpy Education Center. Now, as we are done with this side of the zoo, African animals and the big cats are taken care of. Now we are going to move over to the Bear Walk, the Australian area, and then a couple other smaller builds. But let's head over that way now and check out. So we're back at the education center. Love this building as always. I keep saying that. I think it's a very nice style. But let's now head towards the Tortoise House and the Bear Walk. The Tortoise House right next to the Education Center. As we get a couple more views of this, since this Education Center does wrap around a bit, there's sort of the entrance for the live 4D movies if you're interested in seeing that at the zoo. It's going to be right next to the Tortoise House right here. One of my favorite builds. I'm going to say that a lot, but this actually is probably my top build that I am just so happy with. I haven't seen anyone else build a Tortoise House, so I feel this build is very unique, and that's sort of why I like it a lot. Also a big fan of tortoises, of course, but we have both the species that the tortoises that we have in the game, the Galapagos tortoises and the Aldabra tortoises. In here as well, they have their respective sides, and then they have a little yard that they can hang out in as well. And it's just a cute little smaller build that sort of is a little more realistic than the rest and just adds a lot to the zoo. It's not one of those sort of showstopper exhibits that is very cool and high detail. It's just one of those little things, looks like an older building, that just adds a lot of burst of realism, and it's just something that's unique and fun to look at. So this way, down this path, is how you get back to the entrance of the zoo if you took that left path at the beginning, but it is where the flamingos are, and we're going to check out the flamingos now. Just a smaller build, one of the first animals we put in as well. They're sort of in that zone of species where it's a smaller animal, not in a big area, just sort of a exhibit thrown out there. So we're going to pass by the Bear Walk here, probably the main attraction of the zoo in my mind, and we're going to head down to the Australia area, but we only have one exhibit right now for the Australia area, which is the Outback Odyssey, as we're going to tour right now. This houses the koalas and the kangaroos as well. Nice little area, a little bit more detailed, having fun with the Australia pack when it came out and we put this down. And it's just sort of one of those little areas that's kind of fun, and we're also planning on adding the dingoes as well in a future episode. There is a construction sign at the end of this exhibit when we get there, as there's a ton of people in there, but there's a little koala now. The koalas and kangaroos are in here since they are enriched by being in the same enclosure as each other, so decided to go for that. But new construction this way, we're going to have the dingo habitat and maybe something else, not sure what I'm going to put there yet. But as we're going to head more this way, maybe we'll make it sort of like a wolf area. We'll do the dingoes, we'll do the Arctic wolves, and maybe the timber wolves as well. Just thinking out loud right now. But here we are at the Bear Walk. Love the Bear Walk. This is my sort of pride and joy of this zoo. Fairly recent construction here. We've done these episodes, probably 4 of the last 7 episodes have been of this area, so it's a fairly new area, and I want it to be like the big attraction of the Ranger Park Zoo. So we have the black bears over this way, a little bit of touch of realism, but also making it look nice. Big pool for the black bears to hang out in, nice little like looking like a natural lake, and they have a mountain with a waterfall as well. And as we head out of this way, we're going to go towards the polar outpost, but we are not going to stop it there just yet. We are going to head to the grizzly bear enclosure, which is one of my more proud builds. Spent a lot of time on the Grizzly Peak enclosure, and I think it turned out as one of the better looking exhibits in the zoo. So happy with that. There is construction in the middle of this area, as it is going to be the eatery for the bear walk. So here we are at Grizzly Peak heading this way. We got the grizzly bears hanging out in the pond down there, but just lush trees, very dense forest feel, a little bit of a rock mountain with a cave, little education area up here, and you can get a different view from the grizzly bears from above so you can look down at them. Just different levels to this enclosure. Different areas where you can view the bears. There's areas for the bears to hide from the guests if they need to get away. Just a lot of things done right in this enclosure, in my opinion at least, compared to some of the other builds in the zoo. So that's why I'm so fond of it. Also big fan of grizzly bears, logo of the channel, stuff like that. Of course you're going to enjoy it. But here we are over to the other, probably one of the most recent, it is the most recent of the bear walk area, the Polar Outpost. Very proud of this build as well. We have sort of a polar bear education center, since polar bears are sort of a big animal in a zoo when you have them, because they require so much space and a lot of care, and they're pretty endangered as well. And we can see a little bit of an educator giving a talk here. Now for the architecture of this Polar Outpost, I wanted to go for sort of an Antarctic feel. Feels like an Antarctic outpost, stuff like that, with the high ceilings to guard against the snow, stuff like that. As we look out onto the polar bear enclosure, nice and vast areas. They have a little bit of a cave viewing right here where you can check them out if they're taking a nap, but the polar bears require so much space, and if you have made polar bears in this game, an exhibit for them, you understand that they take a ton of space. So they have a huge area here at the Ranger Park Zoo. Proud of this enclosure, happy with it. It's in the summertime, so there's not a ton of snow out there, but it still looks rocky and arctic regardless. There's a lot of area for them to swim around, lots of enrichment items as well, and I just like how it turned out. So we're going to head this way out of the bear walk. Now the bear walk is not finished. There's going to be a few more bears added to the zoo that's going to go down this path right here, where the construction sign is. And there's also going to be more stuff that way. We're going to have an ape house, a reptile house, and an aquatic center for some penguins. Might drop in the build that we've done recently or build a brand new one. But here we are at the last build and the most recent build in Ranger Park Zoo, the giant river otters. These are sort of a build inspired by the Amazon rainforest and the Amazon River. Not really in a sect of animal area. It's just one of those animal exhibits thrown out there just to have them. Now we are going to show the last thing of this episode, which is this little staff area that sort of does the bear walk along with sort of the otter area. I want to thank you all for watching the episode. I hope you guys did enjoy this tour. If you did like it, please leave a like down below. Leave a comment if you have anything to say. If you aren't subscribed already, please consider doing so. It really does help out the channel, and you won't miss another episode of Ranger Park Zoo. New episodes weekly. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Until then, I am McSnazzi, and I'll see you guys next time.